And then I put the long forend on it just because I got fucking goofy long monkey arms.
Just found my opener.
Oh, shit. Are you recording again?
Welcome to 2A Cops, Cops Supporting Gun Rights. Our hosts, Keith and Matt, have over 50 years combined experience as police officers serving in California. In this podcast, we'll talk about all things related to the Second Amendment from a cop's perspective and dispel the myth that cops are for over-the-top gun control. Hey, welcome to 2A Cops, Cops Supporting Gun Rights. I'm Keith.
And I'm Matt.
And we're going to talk about red flag laws. Now, before we get into red flag laws, let's talk about what an actual red flag law is, because Matt and I have noticed that some people will make the statement, I was red flagged. And Matt, it's a red flag when they say I was red flagged, right?
Right, yes. If the guy's screaming he was red flagged, he probably wasn't, and he probably doesn't even know what an actual red flag law is.
So we don't like red flag laws, just to be clear and to say it up front, as do most cops don't like red flag laws, and we'll talk about it. But let's talk about what it actually is. So a red flag law is a gun control law that permits police or family members to petition a state court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who may be a present danger to others or themselves. Now, the key factor in all of this is a judge is going to make that determination, but the defendant's never there.
Ex parte hearing. It's everybody's word against no one's.
Yes, because there's nobody there to defend you. It's just everybody ganging up on a person saying they shouldn't have you shouldn't have your firearms anymore.
Right. And at least in California, if the cops are going to be petitioning for a red flag law, they can already, if they're concerned that this person's a danger to others, they're just going to 5150 them. They're going to put them on a wealth and institutions code 5150 hold and take them in for a psych evaluation at a hospital. And the law allows them to take firearms from that person when they do that. So there's no need for the cops to go petition a court. So this is basically just going to be, so if the cops are petitioning it, they're doing it based on somebody else's word because they haven't talked to this person. If they talked to them, they would have just 5150'd them. So they're just taking someone else's word that this person's a danger.
And to go back on that whole, when we talk about 5150, basically it's a person that's a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or gravely disabled. And gravely disabled would be, somebody that is,
they're so wacky they're eating their own poop.
Yeah, exactly. Or, I had one lady that was sleeping in the post office, had maggots in her body, like all over her body through open wounds. And she wasn't taking care of herself because she just gave up.
Right.
Something like that. Right. But the thing with the 5150 is that the person, if they're going to be held longer than 3 days, they go to court. And judge makes determination if they're going to be kept longer or whatever, and you're there for that. And as far as keeping guns, you get your guns back. The reason why the cops are taking them is because you either were going to hurt somebody, you were going to hurt yourself, or you just can't take care of yourself. But
it's temporary.
It's temporary. And if the police are going to hang on to them, they've actually got to go to court with you there to hang on to them longer. Right. And it's like that in most states, to be honest. But here, that issue about not having the person there to defend themselves, I think most cops have a problem with it.
Are you suggesting people who don't like guns would maybe not tell 100% truth in court to get a judge to take guns away from someone?
Exactly. These people, this is another example of politicians passing a law and saying the cops are going to come get you and the cops are going to do this and the cops are going to do that. But we sit in our legal update when we learn about these new laws and we laugh in the back going like, yeah, no, we're not. Or this is, stupid. We're not going to comply with this or what have you. I wish the public could sit in on those briefings on the legal update to listen to how much we laugh about the shit that these guys are passing. Now, interesting enough, as far as red flag laws, Oklahoma is the only state with an anti-red flag law. And to be honest, I'm a little shocked that Idaho, where me and Matt are from now, we're, of course, originally from California. I'm shocked that Idaho doesn't have an anti-red flag law and has given me an idea for new legislation in our local session. So I
might have to talk to a legislator or two.
Yeah, and I think that would actually pass here. The West Coast and most of the East Coast have red flag laws.
What do those states typically share in common?
They're all
remind me.
Democrat.
Oh, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And high crime. They all have high crime. So what are some of these red flags? So some of the red flags, people that show signs of erratic behavior or express some intent to hurt themselves or others, or they might be subject to an extreme risk protection order. So again, we go back to this. This would be somebody that has some mental issues, right? Which just because somebody is having a bad time in their life doesn't mean you should deprive them the right to possess guns. I mean, I get it. Let's get them through this bump. But Matt, how many times have you dealt with somebody that was on the verge of killing themselves, but then you see them a year later and they're perfectly fine and their life is good?
Yeah. I mean, not that I'm going to throw names out, but a buddy of mine at one point did try to kill himself, and he's got his issues been resolved. It was all PTSD related and all kinds of other stuff. He's stable as any. Well, I mean, not that I want to compare him to me because I don't know how stable I am, but he's stable. He's normal. He's a law-abiding gun owner. He's not a danger to anybody. But had this been an issue back then, he might not. And it might have changed everything. The entire outcome might have been different, and it might not have been different for the better. That's the problem too.
And the problem is a lot of people don't seek help because they're worried about having their guns permanently taken away from them.
Right. Exactly.
And that's bothersome because people like the VA is notorious for screwing the veterans over.
Well, shrinks in general, unfortunately. And I don't mean that as a derogatory. When I say shrink, I'm talking about psychologists. But people in the mental health field, typically, in my experience, having had 4 different hospitals in the area that I worked, having dealt with a bunch of psychologists over the years, they're almost all anti-gun.
Yes. Because most of them are liberal.
That exactly. And it's the whole, you see, it's just like cops. We get jaded because we see the crappy part of people. So you start disliking people. Well, as a shrink, you're seeing nothing but people who've got issues. So you start thinking everybody has issues.
Yes. Now, a bothersome part about this too is that in most states that have red flag laws, family or community members can petition a court for those orders. Yeah,
your coworker, your pissed off ex-girlfriend.
Right. Oh man, how many calls have you had with these crazy exes just making the most wildest stuff up to get their man in trouble?
Yeah, or man or woman. It goes by. I mean, I've dealt with both versions, male and female, and probably some in between.
And the problem is, like, I'll give you an example. In California, if you have a restraining order against you, it doesn't matter what the restraining order is for.
Right.
But if you have a restraining order against you, then you can't possess a gun. So when that first passed, we had a bunch of criminals filing restraining orders against cops so they couldn't possess a gun and they couldn't go to work. And, I'll give you an example. We had an issue in our family where we had a crazy uncle that didn't like that a couple of us were taking care of an aunt to make sure she was okay. So he tried to file restraining orders on everybody, knowing that half the family is cops,
right?
And that it was going to have an impact. And here we go again. It's these really these crazy people go out there and try to impact somebody that possesses guns by making false allegations. And if you don't have a right to go into court to stand up for yourself, well, that's not right.
Well, and again, the restraining orders, most of them, at least the initial hearings, are all ex parte. So it's just the one person's side of the story, which is why in California, at least in my experience, it didn't take much to get a restraining order granted. You go in, you tell a sob story to a judge with just your version of the story, and bam, there's a restraining order. Now, this person is legally prohibited from possessing firearms.
Yeah.
So it blew me away that California enacted the red flag law when they did, because they already had everything in place to do what they were already trying to do anyway. If this guy's such a danger and he's your he's a relative of yours, you get a restraining order against him. Boom, now he can't have guns. But now they got yet one more way to take firearms from people.
Yeah, it becomes more of a harassment issue.
Exactly.
And the thing that bothers me most is I've seen multiple comments like this from people that want to pass red flag laws. And I'm quoting here: take the guns first, go through due process second.
Yeah.
There couldn't be any more of a more un-American thing to say. And if somebody says something like that, that's a red flag. It's a red flag that person's coming to screw you over.
Yeah, that's not a stable person. If they're saying screw due process, screw the Constitution, I just don't want this person to have guns. I'm thinking the problem might be you.
And I got to tell you, I'm looking at this Oklahoma having an anti-red flag law. When we get done here, I'm going to look it up. And because so you guys don't know this, but I am heavily into politics in Idaho.
No.
We're in the middle of our legislative session right now, and I'm down there multiple times a week. And I'm telling you, I like the sound of an anti-red flag law, and I can just see the people frothing at the mouth to want to pick up that legislation so they could be seen as.
I want the anti-ATF law.
What's that?
I want an anti-ATF law.
So we have that coming. Idaho, right now, we're writing something that makes us a Second Amendment sanctuary for the whole state. And I'm kind of digging it because one of the biggest statements in that is it says police officers don't have to work with federal authorities on gun issues. So what that does, it alleviates the cops where it's like, oh man, I'm sorry. We have a state law that says we don't have to work with you. Sorry. Go pound salt. And it's Idaho. It's not like ATF has a great track record here.
Are you saying there's a reason there's a lot of gun manufacturers and silent suppressor manufacturers here?
Isn't it wonderful? I love it.
Yeah. No arguments for me.
Yeah,
although we need a couple more ammo manufacturers.
Yeah, we have a big one. We got CCI up in Lewiston.
Yeah.
And then who else do we have? We have another one too.
There's another local one to the north. And I'm trying to remember who they were. Smaller one though, not something like CCI. It was.
And if you want to reach out and sponsor 2A Cops, let us know.
We can definitely use an ammo supply.
All right. Well, I think we've talked. I think we run red flag laws into the ground. There's really not much to talk about except that we feel it's unconstitutional. If you look at the 2A Cops website, I wrote an article a while back, and it's actually one of the first articles that we published on that website. So it's a year and a half old now. And I talked about a lot of this back then, and they keep proposing them especially every time there's any kind of a I hate the term mass shooting, but a mass casualty incident. How about that? Where the suspect was using a firearm. I don't want to use the term like gun violence because that's another liberal propaganda term to make guns seem bad. It's a violent criminal using a firearm. Every time there's any kind of incident where some dirtbag goes out and shoots a bunch of people, they start screaming about passing some sort of federal red flag law. And I've even heard some conservative politicians start to back him. I remember at one point, he's dropped it since then, but Dan Crenshaw was actually starting to sounded like he was going to start supporting that stuff. He quickly dropped it, but he made a comment that could have been taken, I guess, either way. And coming from my background of dealing with a place that had red flag laws and seeing the abuse of all the different restraining orders that takes place on a daily basis. Because like we mentioned, just a regular restraining order, those were abused horrendously in my experience. And we receive calls constantly from people in the public, but we receive a lot of calls from other cops, and we're starting to see departments use it on their own people when they shouldn't. And there's one specific case. I don't think we can talk about that one. Can we talk about that one?
I don't know which one you're talking about. Sorry.
There's one where we received multiple ones. There's one that we received where an officer was in an argument with a superior. I hate that name, superior, but you get it, a supervisor. And they ended up suspending him, but then they red flagged the cop went to his house, took his guns, and then when the department was ordered by a judge saying it was a huge overreach, you shouldn't have done it, the department refused to give the guns back.
This is ringing a bell, but I'm not.
Yeah. I remember it because I was mortified. Number one, it showed, like, because we know admin does overreach constantly and in a lot of departments. And this one really bothered me because if you're going to do that to a cop, what are you going to do to a citizen?
Yeah. Especially like there was that, and granted, it's almost a year old video, but that one recently that resurfaced and was making its way around Facebook and the internet of that cop that jammed up. He ends up pulling his taser out and pointing it at the guy because he wasn't wearing a mask in a gas station. It was a straight contempt of cop, is what it was. I mean, it was straight up 100% contempt of cop. The cop didn't like the dude's attitude. The dude did what the cop told him to. He's like, if you're not going to put a mask on, leave. So the guy's leaving, and he makes a under the breath comment to the cop, and it pissed him off. And that dude was way out of line. So if this guy's going to do that, and he's putting it, and the citizen was actually open carrying at the time too. So this guy's got a taser pointing at a guy who's legally carrying an open firearm, and all of this over bullshit in a gas station for a friggin' mask. Over a local mask ordinance. If this guy's going to go that far for that, what would this guy do to somebody who's a gun owner that pissed him off?
Hey, real quick, for our listeners that aren't cops, what's contempt of cop?
Oh, basically just fronting the guy off, not, disregarding him, treating him, just kind of whatever guy, and then walking off. Yeah. It can be taken a bunch of different ways.
You have to listen to me and obey my law.
Right.
More of like
it's typically, it's a badge heavy dude who takes anything as an affront to him, and he's going to prove to you he was wrong, that you were wrong.
Yeah.
The dickheads that you had to work with or didn't go to calls with because they screwed everything up every friggin' time. I had a guy like that, and after working with the guy for like 3 days, I refused to go on calls with him. I freed him. I would rather go to a shooting in progress solo than have him there because he would fuck it up.
We had one of those guys too. Our dispatchers actually had a code that they would give us that we made up because he's so dumb he wouldn't even realize that there's a new code that was made up. And they would give us that code to let us know he was the only available person. And we'd be like, all right, I'll advise on cover. You'd go, and then somebody would free themselves up so they can come cover you.
I'm not surprised.
Those people, that's what we're worried about because there's no due process. There's no need to do a red flag law. We already have laws in place that have due process that take care of these issues. There's no need to keep doing it. And hey, maybe, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and find that Oklahoma anti-red flag law. And if I find it, I'm going to put it in the show notes. And, I'll put some commentary about that red flag law to see if it's good or bad, the anti-red flag law.
Yeah.
And that way because look, man, if I like it, I'm honestly going to copy it, put Idaho code in there, and then I'm going to ship it off to my bestest 2A legislator and ask them to run with it. It's that easy.
Yeah. No, I'm down with that. There's all kinds of legal ways to deal with it already in existence. There's no reason to add more. It's just they keep making it easier and easier to try and take guns from people.
Yeah.
Well, and they were talking about ripe for abuse when Colorado first passed. Wasn't it Colorado where that one woman that that was having a problem with a cop? She ended up filing a red flag order on a cop.
No, it was her. Wasn't it? It wasn't it the officer had shot her son, but her son was a total dirtbag.
Right. And that was Colorado, right?
Totally clean shot. So she did a red flag on the cop.
It was Colorado, right?
It was. I know all of our Colorado listeners are naming the cop right now.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. Yeah. She was served a red flag order, and he shot her son in 2017 and killed him. So as soon as they passed the red flag law, she ends up going in and filing for it and gets it granted initially. And then then they got it. Before it was enforced, because obviously it's the cops, it's one of their own. They're going to jump, the department jumped to defend him, which rightfully so, but they should be jumping to defend anybody, not just one of their own. And I'm not saying anything bad about that department. I know nothing about them, but I'm just talking about, we're talking about the potential for abuse here. And the way some of the laws are written, it can be the department that's abusing it as well. And there are abusive cops who abuse their power, which I could see one of them abusing this as well.
Well, and then, again, what happens if one of our listeners protects themselves? They're not a cop, they're protecting themselves, and then some angry mom does the same thing to them.
Or Bloomberg's angry moms go after him.
Oh, bunch of Karens.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, we beat that dead horse.
Let's beat some more.
If you guys have topics for us, if you can send us an email to podcast@2acops.com, it'll go to both Matt and I. We've actually had some really good emails from you guys that have given us some good ideas that help us, come up with new things for you so we can talk about. But don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and rate us on iTunes, because that's the biggest one, and that's where we get the most. That's where we get the most exposure. But if you can do that for us, so far we're 5 stars all the way across. So let's keep up the magic. But until next time, thanks for listening, and have a safe week. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to and rate 2A Cops on your favorite podcast service. You can subscribe to our newsletter and get current 2A news at 2acops.com. If you have any questions you want answered on the podcast, email us at podcast@2acops.com.